He was a man who had everything, except a living heart. But it only took a girl of just 10 years old, the daughter of his maid, to completely transform the coldest millionaire in the city. It all started the day he deliberately dropped a wallet containing 3,000 reals right in the girl's path. And what she did with that money was something no one expected. What would happen if you found the exact amount of money needed to fulfill your biggest dream lying on the ground and nobody was looking?
The morning sun streamed through the enormous glass windows, casting golden reflections onto the marble floor. Eduardo walked slowly through the house's corridors, surrounded by luxury, yet overwhelmed by an emptiness he couldn't name. The paintings on the walls, the imported sculptures, the designer furniture, everything seemed dead, inert, as if reflecting the owner's own soul. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the distant sound of servants' footsteps going about their mechanical routines. As he observed the Swiss watch on his wrist, Eduardo wondered how long it had been since he had felt something genuine. Since the death of his wife and son in an accident, he had locked himself in a fortress of indifference. Wealth was all he had left, and he used it as a shield against any emotion. His life was a predictable sequence of meetings, dinners, and contracts, everything meticulously calculated, with no room for the unexpected or affection. The employees respected him, but kept their distance. His mere presence was enough to silence laughter, halt conversations, and harden expressions. Eduardo knew this, and although he told himself he preferred it that way, deep down he felt the weight of being feared instead of loved. Money had given him control, but it had deprived him of human warmth. He was a king in an empty castle. That morning, while quietly drinking his coffee, he noticed something different in the day's schedule. The new maid was about to start work. Her name, Helena, sounded simple, familiar, something far removed from his cold routine. He didn't care much, simply asking the driver to pick her up and settle her wherever needed. To him, she would just be another employee. But fate has its ironies. Helena wouldn't come alone. She brought with her a daughter, a 10-year-old girl named Laura. And it was precisely this child, with her gentle smile and pure soul, who would soon touch Eduardo's heart in a way that money never could. At noon, the sound of the electronic gate echoed, breaking the usual silence of the house. Eduardo, curious, looked out the window and saw the car approaching. Two simple figures got out carefully, the mother, humbly dressed, and the girl, carrying an old backpack and a sketchbook in her hands. He frowned, intrigued. Helena, upon entering, bowed her head in respect and greeted the other servants. Laura, in turn, looked around with bright eyes, enchanted by the size of the mansion. There was no fear in her gaze, only genuine admiration. The difference between that world and hers was immense, but the girl seemed undeterred. Eduardo watched from afar, without approaching. Something about that child disconcerted him. Perhaps her purity, perhaps the simple joy she carried. It had been so long since he had seen someone smile without a financial reason. At the end of the day, the millionaire still didn't know it, but that curious look from an innocent girl would be the beginning of the greatest transformation of his life. A small breath of humanity was beginning to pierce the ice in his heart.
And so, without realizing it, Eduardo had just begun the test that would forever change the course of 3 lives. The following morning, Edward entered the kitchen earlier than usual. The aroma of fresh coffee and warm bread mingled with the soft clinking of pots and pans. It was then that he spotted Lara again, sitting in a corner of the table, sketching on a simple napkin. Her firm, light strokes formed the image of a bird in flight, and she seemed so engrossed that she didn't even notice the millionaire's curious gaze. He approached slowly, intrigued by what he saw. "Don't you have any more pages in your notebook?" he asked, with a mixture of interest and harshness. Lara looked up, surprised by his presence, and replied with a shy smile. "They're all gone, sir, but drawing makes me feel good, so I use what I find." Eduardo was silent for a few seconds. The simplicity of that answer disarmed him. He, who had everything money could buy, found himself facing a child who created beauty with almost nothing. "May I see the drawing?" he asked. Lara, hesitantly, held out the napkin. Observing the lightness of the lines, Eduardo felt something warm inside him, a forgotten feeling, perhaps admiration, perhaps longing. "You draw very well," he said, not quite knowing how to express the compliment. The girl blushed, surprised by the recognition. "Thank you, sir. I want to learn to draw properly, like the artists I see on the internet." Eduardo returned the folded napkin, feeling a pang of sadness, knowing that a simple notebook would be a luxury for her. As he left the kitchen, Eduardo remained pensive. For years, he had believed that people were only motivated by self-interest, that everything, even love, had a price. But that girl made him question his certainties. There was a disconcerting purity in someone who dreamed of coloring the world without expecting anything in return. Later, he called Elena into his office. "Your daughter seems to enjoy drawing," he commented, trying to disguise his genuine interest. Elena smiled humbly. "Since she was little, sir, she draws with whatever she has. It's always been like that." Eduardo shook his head slowly, reflecting. "And she's never asked for anything?" "No, sir. She says that mommy already does enough." Those words echoed in his mind like thunder. In a world where everyone demanded more, that girl was content with the bare minimum and even gave thanks. Eduardo leaned back in his chair, looking out the window as an idea began to form. "Elena," he said firmly, "tomorrow I want you to bring your daughter with you again." The maid nodded, surprised, but without questioning. Eduardo, however, was already silently plotting something. When he was alone, he opened the desk drawer and took out a brown leather wallet. Inside, RS 3000 in clean, neatly aligned bills. He looked at the money and whispered to himself, "Let's see if there's any honesty left in this world."
Before we continue, if this story has already touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. Stories like this show that the true value of life is not in money, but in people. Click subscribe and come feel with us the power of real emotions. Helena began her first day of work with quiet dedication. She dusted, organized the rooms, and followed instructions perfectly. Eduardo, watching from afar, admired her efficiency, but what caught his attention most was his daughter's good manners. Lara sat quietly, drawing in a notebook without interrupting or complaining. During lunch, while all the employees ate discreetly in the break room, Lara opened her notebook and began to draw with a simple pen. Eduardo, passing by in the hallway, caught a glimpse of a face drawn with surprisingly delicate lines. He stopped for a moment, curious, and pretended to look at his watch just to get a better look. The drawing depicted a smiling woman, probably his mother, with a serene gaze and tired hands. Around her, flowers and birds added color to the page, even though they only existed in black and blue. There was something poetic in that simplicity, something that awakened dormant memories in Eduardo. "Do you like to draw?" he asked suddenly. Lara, startled, looked up and timidly replied, "Yes, sir. Drawing makes me happy." Eduardo nodded, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to spontaneous conversations, much less with children. Helena, noticing the scene, quickly intervened. "Excuse me, sir, she didn't mean to bother you." Eduardo simply raised his hand, indicating that there was no problem. Inside, however, he felt strangely touched. It had been years since someone had spoken of happiness near him. Later, as he passed by the kitchen again, Eduardo saw Lara sitting on the floor, her notebook resting on her lap. She was drawing with such focus that she seemed to live in another world. The millionaire stopped, silent, just observing. That pure concentration, free from any pretension, awakened in him a deep longing for when his young son used to draw monsters and heroes to show his mother. The memory hit him hard. He felt a lump in his throat and, instinctively, looked away. He didn't want to remember the pain, the accident, the guilt. But something about Lara made him confront the past again. Late in the afternoon, he heard the girl say to her mother, "One day, I'm going to draw on a real tablet to make everything colorful." Helena smiled sadly. "Maybe someday, my daughter. For now, we draw with what we have." Eduardo listened to everything from afar. He remained motionless, thoughtful. It was at that moment that an idea began to sprout in his mind. A curious, even provocative idea. Perhaps it was time to test something that had intrigued him for a long time. Did true honesty still exist in this world?
That night, as the mansion slept, Eduardo couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, something was unsettling him. And it wasn't the fear of losing money, but the fear of being wrong about the human heart. The day dawned peacefully, and Helena arrived at the mansion accompanied by her daughter, as usual. Lara, happy to be there again, greeted the staff cheerfully and went straight to the corner of the pantry where she liked to draw. Eduardo watched from afar, his wallet discreetly in his jacket pocket. Throughout the morning, the millionaire watched Helena work, waiting for the right moment. When Lara went out to get a glass of water, he took advantage of the situation. He walked to the hallway leading to the guest room and purposefully dropped his wallet on the floor, right in the girl's path. Then he discreetly moved away, pretending to answer a phone call. Minutes later, the sound of light footsteps echoed down the hallway. Lara, distracted, almost tripped over her wallet. She bent down, picked it up, and carefully opened it. Inside, the glint of the bills made her hold her breath. It was money, a lot of money, enough to buy not only a tablet, but all the pencils and notebooks in the world. For a few seconds, she stood motionless. Temptation could have overcome anyone else, but Lara's pure gaze did not waver. She closed her wallet, pressed it against her chest, and ran toward the room where Eduardo was, without a second thought. "Sir, I think you dropped this," she shouted, breathless, extending her wallet with both hands. Eduardo slowly looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh, really?" he asked, pretending to be distracted. "No one saw you find it, did they?" Lara shook her head, confused. "No, sir, but I saw—" Eduardo remained silent. The girl's firm and sincere gaze pierced him like an arrow. "My mother says that character is what you do when nobody's watching," Lara added, unaware of the impact of her own words. At that moment, Eduardo felt something collapse inside him. All the beliefs, the cynicism, and the pride he had built up over the years began to crumble. The girl's words echoed like an absolute truth, impossible to deny. He tried to smile, but his eyes welled up with tears. "Your mother taught you well, Lara," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. She simply smiled and went back to drawing, as if nothing had happened. Eduardo remained still, staring into space, feeling small in the face of a child's greatness. That night, when silence returned to the house, Eduardo locked himself in his office. He looked at his wallet on the table, and next to it, the napkin with the drawing of the bird. Two small proofs that purity still existed, and he, A man who no longer believed in anything was beginning to believe in good again.
The next morning, Edward woke earlier than usual. The memory of Lara's honesty still throbbed in his mind. He felt different, light, but also disconcerted. During breakfast, he couldn't concentrate on anything but the image of the girl returning the wallet. Her voice echoed as if the words had become stuck in his consciousness. When Helena arrived at work, Eduardo called her over to talk. "Your daughter is special," he said, looking her in the eyes. Helena, with a shy smile, thanked him. "She's good, sir. I only taught her what I learned. Never take what isn't yours." Eduardo nodded, unsure how to react to the simplicity of that phrase. For him, the world had always been an exchange of interests, and hearing something so pure disarmed him. During the day, Eduardo tried to distract himself with business, but he failed. Each meeting seemed empty, each conversation pointless. Money, once a source of pride, now felt like a burden. He began to wonder when he had lost the ability to feel, and why. In the afternoon, while walking through the gardens, he spotted Lara sitting under a tree, sketching the sky with a blue pen. "Why do you draw so much?" he asked, curious. She smiled without stopping her drawing. "Because drawing makes me happy. And when I'm sad, I draw until I feel better again." Eduardo remained silent for a few seconds, observing the lightness with which she spoke. "What if you could draw with all the colors in the world?" he asked. Lara laughed. "Oh, I would make the most beautiful sky that ever existed." He didn't answer, but he felt something vibrate inside his chest. It was a forgotten feeling, a mixture of hope and tenderness. Back at the mansion, Eduardo stared at the wallet on the table. He could have simply given the money to Lara as a reward, but that would have been too easy. What motivated him now was not the desire to buy smiles, but rather to understand how that purity endured in such a corrupt world. That night, as the clock struck 11, he turned on the bedside lamp and wrote something on a piece of paper. "Some people are worth more than any fortune." He folded the note and put it in his wallet, which now represented much more than a test. It was a reminder that incorruptible souls still existed. Helena, as she said goodbye the next day, commented, "You seem different, more calm." Eduardo simply replied with a slight nod. "Perhaps I'm beginning to learn." When she left, he looked at the note again and thought, "If a child can act with such integrity, perhaps there is still hope for us adults." And for the first time in many years, he fell asleep peacefully. The next day, the sun streamed through the windows when Eduardo woke feeling restless. He wanted to test something deeper, not to doubt Lara, but to understand the extent of her honesty. He picked up his wallet again, this time without the note, and walked through the silent hallways of the house.
Helena was cleaning the room while Lara drew intently on the rug. Eduardo watched from afar, feigning distraction, and then let his wallet slip from his pocket, falling to the floor right next to the girl. He pretended not to notice and slowly left. Lara, noticing the fallen object, carefully picked it up. She opened it and saw the bills again, bills that seemed to smile at her, gleaming in the sunlight. A soft sigh escaped her lips. It was a lot of money, more than she had ever held in her hands. But the decision came without hesitation. "Mr. Eduardo!" she shouted, standing up. Her voice echoed through the corridors, pure and confident. He turned slowly, feigning interest. "You dropped this again." Lara walked over to him and returned the wallet with an innocent smile. Eduardo feigned confusion. "But Lara, nobody saw you take it. Why didn't you keep the money? You could have bought whatever you wanted." She frowned, as if the question were absurd. "But I saw you, sir, And Mom says that character is what you do when nobody's watching." Those words, simple and pure, struck Eduardo like an arrow to the heart. For a moment, he couldn't answer. He just looked at the girl, who continued smiling with the naturalness of someone who doesn't understand the weight of her own virtues. He swallowed hard, trying to contain his emotion. "Your mother raised you very well," he murmured. Lara replied sweetly, "She says money comes and goes, but one's name remains." Eduardo looked away, overcome by a mixture of shame and admiration. Helena, who was watching from afar, noticed the change in her boss's expression. Eduardo was no longer the man he once was. Something inside him had broken, or perhaps finally been set free. When he returned to his office, the millionaire sat in silence for long minutes. He looked at his wallet on the table, opened it, and took out the money. He picked up the note he had written days before, and, with tears in his eyes, added a new sentence. "Some people are priceless, and they are the ones who teach us how to live." At that moment, Eduardo understood. True wealth lay not in what he possessed, but in what that girl had just given him back: faith in humanity. Edward spent the rest of the day in silence. He couldn't concentrate on meetings, emails, or reports. Everything seemed mundane after the girl's simple answer, "But I saw it." That phrase echoed in his mind, mingling with old memories, like a distant bell awakening memories he was trying to forget. The image of Lara returning the wallet, with her clear eyes and serene smile, haunted him in a sweet and painful way.
Eduardo remained silent. That simple answer, spoken without sadness, moved him deeply.
That afternoon, he canceled his appointments and stayed home. He spent hours sitting in his office, staring blankly, thinking about how money had shaped his life. He had everything the world envied, but nothing that truly mattered. Lara's purity made him feel ashamed, not of his fortune, but of what he had done with it. That evening, Helena was getting ready to leave when Eduardo called her again. "Helena, can I ask you something? Your daughter has never asked for anything, even though she wants it so much?" The woman smiled. "Never, sir. She says that asking is easy, but thanking is more beautiful." Eduardo was speechless. Each answer from this mother seemed like a stroke of wisdom in his disbelief. After the two women left, he walked into the living room and looked around. Everything was immaculate, but lifeless. He sat down and recalled the days with his son, little Lucas, and the afternoons when he drew monsters and heroes on the living room floor. The memory both hurt and comforted him. "You used to draw too, my boy," she murmured, looking at the ceiling, "and I never realized how happy it made you." The tears came silently, without resistance. It was as if Lara had reopened a door he had sworn to keep locked. In the following days, Eduardo began to change small things. He started greeting the employees, asking if they were well, and listening to their answers with genuine interest. For the first time, the house seemed to have a life of its own. The employees found it strange, but soon realized that something about him had changed forever. Helena noticed the change in her boss's gaze, lighter, more human. And Lara, without quite understanding, simply smiled, happy to see the serious gentleman happier. That night, Eduardo picked up the napkin with the bird drawing again. He placed it inside a simple frame and hung it on his office wall. Below, he wrote in small letters, "Purity is not in the hands that draw, but in the heart of those who believe." And so, the man who had doubted goodness finally began to believe again. On Monday morning, Eduardo waited for Helena to finish her kitchen chores before calling her into his office. He was nervous, something rare for a man accustomed to managing rooms full of executives.
But this conversation wasn't about business. It was about something money couldn't solve: regret. When she entered, he stood up, a simple but significant gesture. "Helena, I need to be honest with you," he began, his voice lower than usual. "That time, when your daughter found the wallet, it was a test. I did it on purpose." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Helena didn't react immediately. She just looked at him serenely. "I figured, sir," she finally replied. "And why did you do that?" Eduardo swallowed hard. "Because I stopped believing in people. I tried to prove that nobody is truly honest when money is involved. But your daughter proved me wrong." Helena lowered her eyes, touched, but also sad. "You thought you could measure someone's heart with a wallet," she said, without anger, only with a sweet melancholy.
He sighed. "I know, and it was wrong. I wanted to apologize, truly." Helena took a deep breath and nodded. "There's nothing to forgive, sir. Sometimes God needs to use our mistakes to open the eyes of our hearts." Eduardo looked at her in astonishment. Simple words, but full of faith. "Your forgiveness relieves me more than you can imagine," he said sincerely. "But the truth is, it was your daughter who transformed me. She showed me something I had forgotten." Helena smiled slightly. "Lara always had a pure heart, and you can have one again if you want." Those words echoed in his mind for hours. When Helena left, Eduardo remained there alone, staring at the wallet on the table. That piece of leather, once a symbol of power, was now merely a reminder of how much he had lost throughout his life. Later, he went to the garden, where Lara was drawing a flower with a broken pencil. "Do you like flowers?" he asked, trying to start a conversation. "I do, sir, because they even grow in the middle of the cement, just to see the sun." Eduardo smiled, charmed by the girl's unintentional poetry. "You're very wise for your age," he said, chuckling softly. "No, sir. It's just that I pay attention to things that nobody else notices." That sentence completely disarmed him. Eduardo realized that perhaps that was what he had stopped doing, paying attention to what really matters. That night, as he looked at the painting of the bird, he felt a silent certainty within him. Lara had not only taught him about honesty, she had given him back the pure gaze he had lost. And without realizing it, Eduardo began to long to be worthy of that girl's trust. The day dawned serene, and a ray of sunshine pierced through the curtains of Eduardo's office. He got up with a new purpose. He decided he would do something for Lara, not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. He wanted to repay, in some way, the invisible good she had done for him. The girl drew dreams, and now he wanted to help her achieve them. While having coffee, he observed Helena and Lara in the kitchen. The mother was serving bread and milk, and the daughter, smiling, was sketching a sun in the corner of her napkin. "Why do you always draw, Lara?" Eduardo asked, sitting nearby. She looked up and replied naturally, "Because drawing is my way of making the day more beautiful." Eduardo smiled, touched by the answer. "And what would you like to draw if you could choose anything?" Lara thought for a few seconds, biting her pencil. "A sunset with all the colors of the world. But for that, I'd need a tablet, right? But that's okay. Paper works too."
At dusk, he walked through the garden, observing the well-tended flowers. Each petal seemed more alive than he felt. He sat on a wooden bench and closed his eyes, trying to understand what that child had stirred within him. For the first time in years, he cried, not from sadness, but from recognition. It was as if life was giving him a second chance to believe in goodness. When Helena finished her work and went to say goodbye, Eduardo called her back. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice soft. Helena nodded, curious. "Your daughter taught me a lesson today," he began. "I dropped that wallet on purpose. I wanted to test it." Helena paled, surprised. Eduardo, embarrassed, lowered his eyes. "I did it because I no longer believed in honesty. I thought everyone had a price." A heavy silence filled the room. Helena took a deep breath before answering. "Sir, money can test many things, but it doesn't teach the value of what is right. That's something we learn at home." These words struck Eduardo hard. He looked up and saw in the woman's tired eyes a serenity he hadn't seen in a long time. "You're right, ma'am, and forgive me. I think, deep down, it was me who was being tested." Helena smiled slightly. "There's nothing to forgive, sir. That's how you saw what money can't buy." After she left, Eduardo remained alone, staring at his reflection in the window. That man in the expensive suit and hardened face seemed like a stranger. Who was he, after all? A successful man, yes, but empty, cold, incapable of feeling pride in himself. That night, he walked through the dark house, observing the paintings and luxury objects. Everything seemed insignificant. He stopped before the unlit fireplace and whispered, "What have I done with my life?" The echo of his voice was the only answer. In his room before going to sleep, he took his wallet out of his pocket and placed it on the nightstand. For the first time, he looked at it not thinking about its value, but about its meaning. "Laura," he murmured, "you showed me something I had forgotten." He closed his eyes and slept peacefully, feeling, perhaps for the first time in many years, a touch of humanity awakening within him. The following days passed slowly. Eduardo tried to follow his routine, but everything he did seemed devoid of purpose. The meetings sounded empty, the conversations with businessmen cold and automatic. Deep down he felt strange, as if something inside him had shifted, but he didn't know what to do with it yet. During lunch, he watched Helena and Lara from afar. The girl was drawing a tree on a piece of brown paper, using only a black pen. Eduardo approached, curious. "Why a tree without color?" he asked. Lara looked at the drawing and replied, "Because I don't have colored pencils yet. But when I do, it will be beautiful."
Those words remained etched in his mind. The man who had once amassed fortunes now found himself moved by such a simple desire. He thought of his son, little Lucas, and how he too had dreamed of painting until the day of the accident. It was then that emptiness took hold of his soul, the same emptiness that Lara, now unknowingly, was filling. Later, Eduardo got in his car and left without saying anything. He drove to a large electronics store. Inside, he got lost among the colorful shelves and bright screens. "Can I help you, sir?" asked the salesman. "I want the best drawing tablet you have," he replied without hesitation. While the clerk prepared the package, Eduardo looked at his reflection in the shop window. He saw a different man, someone more human, lighter. For the first time in a long time, he felt he was doing something truly right. When he got home, he put the gift away in his office. He decided he wouldn't just give it away any old way. He wanted it to be a special moment, a symbol of what Lara had awakened in him. Not just a simple gift, but a silent acknowledgement. That evening, when Helena went to say goodbye, Eduardo said, "Tomorrow I want to take you to somewhere." She found it strange, but agreed, though suspicious. "Where, sir?" He just smiled. "You'll see." As he turned off the lights in the mansion, Eduardo looked at the drawing of the bird on the wall and thought, perhaps what Lara taught me wasn't just honesty, but the art of flying again. He lay down in silence with a slight smile on his face, the first genuine smile in years. That night brought back memories Eduardo had buried long ago. He dreamed of his son, Lucas, an 8-year-old boy with an easy smile and curious eyes. In the dream, the boy ran through the garden of their old house, holding a colored pencil, drawing imaginary monsters and heroes. Eduardo, in the distance, watched him, but never approached. When he tried to call him, the dream dissolved into silence. He woke up with a heavy heart. He got up and walked to his office, still in the dark. The clock showed 4 in the morning. He picked up the drawing of the bird, hanging on the wall, and observed it for long minutes. That simple childlike stroke reminded him of his son and the pain of losing him in a car accident. It was on that day that Eduardo closed his heart and decided to live only for his work. Now, however, something was changing. Lara, with her purity and talent, was rekindling in him the tenderness that time had buried. He saw in her eyes the same curiosity as Lucas, the same sparkle of someone who sees the world with love. "Is that why she appeared in my life?" he asked his own reflection, his voice choked with emotion. During coffee, Helena noticed her boss's different expression. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, pouring his cup. Eduardo took a deep breath. "It's been a long time since I've felt like this, alive." Helena smiled. "Sometimes God sends the right people when you least expect them." He looked at her with silent gratitude.
Later, Eduardo spent the day watching Lara play with the servants in the garden. She laughed loudly, drew flowers on the ground with chalk, and seemed to bring life to every corner of the mansion. "It's amazing how a child can transform an entire place," he thought. The sound of her laughter enveloped him like music. In the afternoon, he went to the room and opened an old wooden box kept in the closet. Inside were Lucas's drawings, small, colorful scribbles on yellowed paper. Touching them, Eduardo cried for the first time without shame. "Forgive me, my son," he whispered. "I should have kept more of you inside me." At that moment, he realized that Lara hadn't just reminded him of the past, she was healing it. Through her, he was finding a way to reconcile with the memories he had been avoiding facing. That night, she wrote in her diary, which had been forgotten in a drawer for years. "Today I understood that love doesn't die. It just disguises itself as longing until someone awakens it again." When it was over, he felt a rare lightness. The emptiness that had accompanied him for years was beginning to be filled, not with money, but with meaning. Before going to sleep, she looked at the tablet wrapped in gold paper on the table and smiled. Tomorrow would be the right day to return something to her that she didn't even know she had given: hope. Dawn brought a different energy to the house. The sky was clear, and the first rays of sunlight illuminated the white walls of the mansion. Eduardo, dressed simply, awaited Helena and Lara at the front door. When they arrived, he greeted them with a warm smile, a gesture that surprised them both.
"We're going out today," he said. "I have a special place to show you." Lara was thrilled. "Where to, sir?" Eduardo winked mysteriously. "You'll see." They got into the car and drove down the road in silence. Helena watched her boss in the rearview mirror, finding his calm demeanor strange. It was as if that rigid, distant man had been replaced by someone new. After a few minutes, the car stopped in front of a large technology store. Lara's eyes widened in delight. "Wow, what a beautiful place!" she exclaimed. Eduardo opened the door and gestured with his hand. "Come in, young lady. Today, you'll choose whatever you want." Helena was confused. "Sir, what is this?" Eduardo smiled. "A gift, or rather, a thank you." Lara looked at him confused. "But I didn't do anything." He crouched down to her level. "Yes, you did, Lara. You taught me something I had forgotten, the value of what is priceless."
"Can I keep this drawing?" he asked. Lara nodded happily. "Of course, but only if you promise you'll always smile like that." Eduardo chuckled softly, his first genuine laugh in a long time. "I promise, young lady." That night, he placed the drawing on the same wall where the bird he had drawn on the napkin had been. Now 2 images watched him, the symbol of innocence and the portrait of hope. "They are my 2 reminders of humanity," he thought silently. Before going to sleep, Eduardo picked up his diary and wrote, "Today I realized that life tests us, not to punish us, but to teach us. Sometimes it's a child who comes to show us the way back home." As he turned off the light, he glanced one last time at the tablet in Lara's hands, who was sleeping on the sofa, and smiled. For the first time in years, he felt truly blessed. In the following days, Eduardo seemed like a different man. He greeted the employees sincerely, participated in conversations, and sometimes even joined in the laughter. Helena, observing from a distance, commented to the others, "It seems like he was born again." And in fact, he had been, not in body, but in heart. Lara continued to visit the house with her mother and spent her afternoons drawing. Eduardo made a point of accompanying her, sitting beside her and observing each stroke, curious as a child. "You should try drawing too," she would say. "I'm not good at it," he would reply, laughing. "But nobody starts out good, sir. You get better with practice," she insisted. One day, he picked up a piece of paper and tried to draw the same bird she had drawn weeks before. The result was crooked and clumsy, but Lara applauded enthusiastically. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed. "A little white lie," he said, amused. "It's not a lie, sir. It's hope." Those words kept echoing in his mind. Eduardo realized that what Lara saw in others was always the best, even when the world saw the opposite. This ability to see goodness where no one else did deeply inspired him. Over time, he began to think about something bigger. He felt that what he had learned couldn't stay just between them. It was necessary to transform that experience into something that would reach other people, other children like Lara. Then an idea began to take shape: to create a project that would unite art, education, and opportunities. "Helena," he said one afternoon, "do you think your daughter would be happy to teach other children to draw?" Helena's eyes widened. "Teach? But she's only 10 years old, sir." Eduardo smiled. "Indeed, and she's already taught more than many adults." In the following days, Eduardo gathered lawyers, professors, and artists. He decided to found an institution to support the talent of low-income youth. He would call the project Colors of Hope, inspired by the sparkle that Lara had brought back into his life.
When he told her the news, Laura jumped for joy. "Can I help, sir?"
Of course you can, he replied, smiling. You will be the heart of this project. That night, while everyone celebrated the start of the new journey, Eduardo looked up at the sky. The stars seemed closer, more vibrant. I think that's what it means to be reborn, he thought. And for the first time since losing his son, he felt peace. The peace that comes when the heart learns to love again. The big day had arrived. Months after the idea was born, the project, Colors of Hope, was finally going to be inaugurated. The old mansion that Eduardo owned in the countryside was transformed into an art and education center for underprivileged children. The walls, once cold and white, were now covered with colorful murals, many of them painted by Lara. The atmosphere vibrated with life, laughter, and the sound of pencils gliding across paper. Eduardo walked through the corridors with a different gleam in his eyes. That place, once a symbol of loneliness, was now a dwelling place of dreams. Children of various ages explored drawing, music, and reading rooms. Helena, moved, observed everything from a distance, with tears in her eyes. I never imagined seeing something like this, sir, she said. Eduardo smiled. Neither did I, Helena, but she showed me the way. Lara was in the center of the main room, surrounded by classmates. She proudly showed off the tablet she had received, teaching other children how to draw digitally. See, you just touch here and draw the outline. It's easy, she said enthusiastically. Eduardo watched the scene, his chest swelling with pride. In a special corner of the main wall hung a picture with the drawing from the original napkin, the bluebird. Below it, a golden plaque bore a simple inscription. The purity of a child can rekindle a light in 1,000 hearts. During the opening ceremony, Eduardo was invited to say a few words. He went up onto the small makeshift stage and looked at the audience, children, parents, volunteers. For a moment, silence fell. Then he took a deep breath and began. Not long ago, I thought everything had a price, that kindness was something dying out. But one day, a 10-year-old girl showed me otherwise. She not only taught me what honesty is, she restored my faith in people. The audience listened attentively. Eduardo continued. This girl is here today. Her name is Lara, and it is thanks to her that this place exists, because when the heart is pure, even the smallest gestures change the world. Lara blushed shyly and lowered her head. People applauded, and Eduardo knelt beside her and handed her an envelope. Inside was a small letter and a certificate with her name printed on it. Lara Helena, first honor student of the Colors of Hope Institute.
The girl, surprised, simply smiled. Can I really choose whatever I want? Anything, he replied excitedly. Lara walked between the shelves and stopped in front of a modern tablet. She touched the screen carefully, as if holding a treasure. This one will do, sir. It's simple, but it has the colors I need. Eduardo smiled, his eyes welling up with tears. You can take it. But what came next completely disarmed him. Lara looked him in the eyes and said, But it's expensive, isn't it? I can take the cheaper one, and you can use the rest to help other children. That way more people can draw too. For a moment, Eduardo was speechless. Her generosity seemed boundless. You have a heart bigger than the world, Lara, he said, touching the girl's shoulder. Elena, her eyes shining, whispered, I told you she was different. As they left the store, Lara held the tablet as if she were carrying a dream. Eduardo, walking beside her, felt something new inside him, a warm and profound sense of purpose. As the car drove back home, he looked out the window and thought, perhaps the true meaning of having a lot is being able to give back what life has given me twofold.
And at that moment, Eduardo realized that it wasn't Lara who was receiving a gift. It was he who was being given the chance to start over. The drive home was silent, but full of meaning. Lara looked at the tablet in her lap, her eyes shining with gratitude. Elena held back tears, trying to comprehend her boss's generosity. Eduardo, at the wheel, watched the girl's smiling face in the rearview mirror. That expression of pure happiness touched him more than any million-dollar profit ever had. When they arrived at the mansion, Lara ran to the kitchen and carefully opened the gift as if it were a jewel. She turned on the device and immediately began to draw. The colors danced on the screen, flowers, birds, and a sky that seemed infinite. Eduardo approached slowly, enchanted. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "It's you," she replied, smiling. "But you look different. You're smiling now." Eduardo felt a lump in his throat. He was speechless for a few seconds and then just nodded, moved. "It's been a long time since I've seen someone draw me smiling," he murmured. Elena, who had been watching from afar, approached. "She likes to bring joy to people, sir. I think it's her way of giving thanks for life." Eduardo looked at her tenderly. "Then she's an artist of hearts," he replied. Elena smiled, proudly. Lara finished the drawing and showed it. It was simple, but full of emotion. Him, her, and her mother holding hands under a colorful sky. In the bottom corner, Lara had written, "Family is what makes us believe again." Eduardo couldn't hold back his tears.
She hugged him tightly. "Thank you, sir." He returned the hug, moved. "No, Lara, I'm the one who should thank you. You saved me from myself." Tears streamed down his face silently, mingling with the most sincere smile he had ever given in his life. In the following months, the project flourished. Eduardo began visiting the center every day, helping, listening, and learning. Lara continued to draw, now with colors, dreams, and smiling people. One of her most special paintings showed a man and a girl releasing a bird towards the sky, a symbol of freedom and renewal. One day, as they were walking together through the courtyard, Lara looked at him and said, "See, sir, now you draw smiles too." Eduardo stopped, looked at the horizon, and smiled. "That's right, my little artist, and this was the most beautiful drawing I've ever made." If this story moved you, imagine how many others can touch your heart. Sign up now and join our community of people who believe in goodness, hope, and the power of small acts. Because here, every story brings a new smile.